Hello there, and today we have Mr. Theo Rallis. This is Yana Arsenault from the Pain Freedom Method. Welcoming Theo Rallis, and telling us what his story was, what his story is now, and how fantastic his future looks. So, Theo, thank you for coming to have a chat with me.
You're welcome. It's awesome. I'm excited.
Awesome. So, Theo, you had joined Pain Freedom Method program. Oh my goodness, how many months ago was it now? January?
January. Yeah, January.
January. So can you be so kind and walk me through what you were experiencing before? Because I had met you about a year prior to, and you were really in a health crisis. So can you walk us through, what physically was going on, how you were emotionally feeling, and, how did that what was really going on in your life?
Oh, okay. So I'm just trying to summarize this. This is hard. Okay. So let's see, 5 years ago, I went into complete renal failure. And then just with a very extreme diet, I was able to ward off not dilation. Oh my God. What is it called? It's like I've erased it from my mind. I don't want to even think about it. What is it when people, dialysis? Oh my God, Jesus. So,
That's good. That's good that you're not even remembering the words.
I'm not even remembering the words. So, and then last year, year before, we were doing Art in the Park. An individual came forward that I met in yoga class. She decided to be a donor, and she ended up being an identical twin match, which was completely unheard of. And then since then, she's her and her husband Tony are absolute family. Our kids refer to them as aunt and uncle, and it's funny too when you see her with my brother and like the three of us together. She's literally the missing link. Like she looks like the sister we always had.
Oh my goodness.
So it's
So
awesome.
for the viewers that are watching and that are going to be watching this, when Theo was talking about dialysis, so he basically was basically kidneys were not working and they were in failure.
Yeah.
So amazing that you found a donor. And I want to go back to how you are easily, as you were saying, I just forget the words, but the thing is it's not even in your dialogue any longer. And that's really, honestly, it's really amazing because it just goes to show that you're not living from your past life any longer. You're moving and living in your present and creating your future. So
Right.
I want to, if you can, walk us through your emotional state. So you had that beautiful transplant, you found a donor, amazing that it was a twin match.
Yeah.
And I'm getting goosebumps talking about this. Walk me through your emotional state prior to and then after having the transplant and up to you and I having the conversation about Pain Freedom Method.
Totally. So what's interesting is, when you're an individual who's doing all the right things in life, and then suddenly you're hit with one of these health crises, and they're huge. You go through the stages, all the stages, right? I mean, of initial one is like absolute anger, and then, frustration. And then you can't understand why people who eat and live these horrific lives are functioning quite well. And then you've done everything right. Suddenly you're in this crisis. But the interesting part though is I was watching and listening to Wayne Dyer, and he had said that life happens for you. And when you stop believing that it's just a t-shirt slogan and truly believe it in your heart, then you start to see why it happened for you. So it's interesting because I needed to go through that journey. And then I was on this path of enlightenment of just accepting and always, it's funny because no one really knew I was sick. They would, say, oh, how is everything going? And then when I would tell them, they would be, well, why are you so positive? And I said, well, because life happens for you. It's interesting. You don't know at the time why it's happening for you, but
For sure.
You have to, right? But you truly have to believe it's happening for you. So fast forward to my amazing day. I have my transplant. Things are amazing. My creatinine levels are coming back down. I'm starting to feel like a human being again. What they don't tell you, though, is post-surgery is you're going to go into PTSD because now you're in constant fear that I don't want to lose this amazing gift I just got. So what's interesting is I knew that I needed to deal with that issue because I was already on a path of enlightenment, but I just didn't have the tools to fully understand how to deal with that. So, to complicate things, there's family. Family is this interesting dynamic. And, everyone has completely different triggers. I'm going to call them triggers, catalysts. And so for me, it was always having to deal with my family. They were in complete denial for the 4.5 years that I was like struggling with my health. And then post, they really didn't know how to talk to me. And then you grew up with this, well, I guess I'm sort of fast forwarding. So I'm trying to deal with all of these issues, and I'm not doing well because my creatinine levels are still rising. My blood pressure isn't coming down. And I know it's only been 6 months or 7 months, 8 months since my transplant, but things should be progressing nicely, and they're not. So at this point, I finally gave up. I'm like, you know what? I don't know how to deal with my family. I don't know how to deal with these certain issues, and I need to find someone. And it's interesting too, because I'm, I don't want to say frugal. I'm like cheap as hell. And I told Yana this. I'm like, man, you're expensive, but I know I have to do this. And it's funny because every single chapter we would laugh, because I would start the chapter and start reading, and I'm like, oh my God, I so know all this, because I've already been on a path of enlightenment. And then I'm reading, I'm like, this is terrible. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. And by the time I was done the chapter, I was like, holy cow, that was amazing. And I'm just writing in my journal and just writing and writing. And every single time she would just break out laughing, because I'd be like, well, that was a waste of money, until I got to the end. I'm like, that was so powerful. So there you go. I know I talk too much, but
No, oh God, no, you don't talk too much. So Theo, how was your pain levels? Because I want you to talk about Frankie.
yes.
And your pain that you were experiencing. And there was a point in the program where you were able to tap into that pain, because when you're talking right now, I know sometimes it's challenging because you're post the program. So your program, your neural network in your brain is now programmed to stay in your present. So it's funny because even as I'm listening to you right now, you are staying in the present moment, because I feel like there was a lot that was playing in your background that you were unaware of that really stepped forward. And that was the enlightenment for you, because you didn't realize that it was playing in the back. But for the sake of us talking about the pain, the physical pain as well, because I know that you talked about your creatine levels and your blood pressure, which was most important. But your pain was telling you something. So can you tell me a little bit about your pain and what you discovered what that pain was telling you?
Sure. I mean, it's interesting because as you go through the program, right? Spoiler alert, you're going to run into where you become the watcher, but you become hypersensitive, not only about what you say or what other people say, but also about what you're feeling. So I always had an intuitiveness to, pain and stuff, but I never could link it to an emotion. And so that's what the program really helps you with. So it's interesting because having kidney issues, they're directly related to fear. And so it's interesting how my entire life has been so fear-based. And then sure enough, you link it back to, two immigrant parents who came to a country who were in constant fear, and, they impose inadvertently their ideologies onto, their children. So sort of learn that that's how you should live life, is completely fear-based and then going from 0 to 100. But for an individual who has kidney issues, that's a really bad way to live your life, because all you're going to keep doing is hurting those amazing little organs. So it was interesting because I wasn't cognizant of the fear. I mean, I understood that I was always scared and timid and things would cause me fear. But once you fully understood the fear itself, then it was interesting how I immediately tied it to pain. So for instance, my original kidney, so I was born with solitary kidney, whenever I would start having worry, doubt, or stress, crazy amounts of stress, I would get back pain, and it would radiate right from my kidney. And it was crazy how much back pain. And then whenever I would have fear, like really excessive fear, like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my kidney. Oh my God, this is going to go wrong. Oh my God, I'm going to lose this deal. Then Frankie, my new kidney, would start hurting. And it was so crazy. Now, fast forward to once you finish the program. When I get stressed now and I feel it in my back, I break out laughing because I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly why that pain's there. And so you do like a little deep breathing, what Yana calls it 4-second breathing. You work through that for a little bit, focus on it because you know it's there, acknowledge it, and suddenly it's gone. And then the same happens with my kidney in the front. As soon as I start having like fear and doubt and worry, same thing. Drink a little bit more water, breathe through it, recognize it, accept it, and then it's completely gone as well. And it's interesting how you can control the actual pain in your body, which prior to that, I remember when I was 12 years old, I went to chiropractor after chiropractor after chiropractor to try to, I couldn't stand up straight. I was in so much pain. I couldn't stand up straight. And then I went to this crazy Portuguese lady in Toronto who had no degree, worked out of her basement, and she just sat me down and then started pinching with nerves and pressed it back into place and put a patch on me. And suddenly I was walking straight. But what was interesting was it was all around nerves, right? And we don't talk about that. We only focus on muscles and skeleton and blood, but your brain is what controls so much of your body. I know I just rambled. I rambled and rambled. I apologize.
No, that's okay. No. Theo, don't ever apologize.
Okay.
Not seriously. There's people that are going to watch this that really want to grasp what others have gone through. And I feel like, with your transplant and the road that you were going down, which was not a great road because your creatine levels had crept back up.
Yeah.
And your blood pressure had crept back up. And there's other people that are going through similar experiences, maybe not necessarily a kidney transplant, but are having some health crisis and don't realize that, the power is within themselves. When I remember saying that to you, and you were like, hey, so how is the power within myself?
Right.
How, what, where, and, all those questions. So take me back to, so I know every single month after the transplant, you were going to London to have your test, which is about a 2-hour drive. So every month they were monitoring you through tests. So walk me through just before you went into Pain Freedom Method. Walk me through what those results were.
Oh, it was just progressively creeping. My creatinine levels were creeping up. My blood pressure was not dropping. It was still elevated, even though I was on calcium channel blockers. It just wasn't coming down. I mean, it was okay, and it was way better where it was, but it just wasn't progressing where they needed to be. And it was interesting because, we were doing everything from a science-based perspective to take care of it. And it's interesting. So then we start the program. So we start the program, we start working through that. You start working through issues that you haven't addressed before. And then suddenly I remember one day driving to London, and you just have this, and I think I was halfway through the program, but I might have been fast.
It was 4 weeks. It was 4 weeks.
4 weeks?
It was 4 weeks. You're 4 weeks into the program because that's what really blew your socks off.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I just said, I don't want to live in a world of fear anymore. I'm done living fear. Whatever comes will come. And it was just a switch on the way, like 5 a.m. on the way to London. I just had that just realization, epiphany. I'm not going to live with fear anymore. And I go there and they take my blood pressure. It's suddenly, so my blood pressure was always around like 140, especially when I was at the doctor's, right? Because constantly stressed, right? Because you're stressed and worried. So 140 over 110. So I'm sure people listening to that are thinking, wow, that's crazy. But hypertension and kidney disease go hand in hand. So that day, my blood pressure was 110 over 70. And they're like looking at me, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I feel fantastic. And so then we do my blood work. My blood work suddenly went from 150 to 135, which is a pretty significant drop.
That was your creatine levels?
Those were my creatine levels, yeah. And everything else, my blood work was totally perfect. Now, you could say, well, I had done everything right for that week and things were fantastic. but it was interesting. It's since then I've gone back obviously a few times, and sure enough, everything's exactly where it was that day that I made that mental switch that I'm done living in fear.
It still brings tears to my eyes, honestly. Goosebumps. It does. It really does.
Yeah,
The power has always been within you.
it totally is. I mean, so there's good and bad with your program. You're going to like this. The amazing part is obviously being truly aware of your emotions, right? I mean, that's huge, how those emotions can control or manifest, whether it's dis-ease in your body or, just pain. But the interesting part is as well, everyone now, so I used to be the joker, and I would always joke because didn't like tension or stress, things that would, I always wanted people to be happy around me. And it was one of my diffusing techniques. Now turning into a watcher is interesting because everyone, whenever they leave our house, so we happen to be that house where everyone gathers and has parties or friends over and dinner. Now everyone's like, is there something wrong with Theo? What's wrong with Theo? He wasn't really talkative. But I enjoy now listening to other people, not feeling that I have to jump in, and just seeing where conversations go, as opposed to, look at me, let me tell you about myself. It's like, I really don't care anymore. I just like being the watcher. And it's really helped, especially with the individuals in my life that were causing me stress, to deal with them so much better, because now I just like listening to their rambling, where before it would cause triggers and you would just go off, and it's harder now to cause a trigger. Not saying that it doesn't happen, it happens. But when it does, I recognize it, breathe through it, and it's a lot better.
So I want to round back to what you just said, because it's really, really beautiful. One of the magical parts is it's being able to hold the room. And just as I said that, I got a sheet of goosebumps, because when you go into a room and you feel like you have to perform, it feels like chaos.
Yeah.
And that in itself can be extremely stressful. Whereas now when you walk into a room and you hold the energy, because you maintain and sustain your own energy frequency, your own internal state, nobody else can generally touch that. And there are going to be moments, but you can bring yourself back. You don't become as elevated, and you bring yourself back to that homeostasis through those tools.
Right.
And even to this day, like we're now in July. So you've been post quite a few months, and you're still utilizing the tools, which brings me to, what you're experiencing right now.
Oh, right now? My experiencing right now. It's interesting. I'd like to say my life is like fantastic, and it is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It's incredible. The fact that we exist is incredible. Not to share too much, but obviously in my life, I've got some crazy other health issues happening with my little one that would probably cripple most people. Not probably, would cripple most people. And the interesting part is, it doesn't affect me. I mean, it obviously affects me because I'm not sleeping anymore. But aside from that, so lack of sleep and all those other factors because of the issues, it's interesting. It's not the same. I'm not the same individual I was prior to this, where I would be in a constant state of fear and stress and physically crippled. That doesn't exist anymore. So it's interesting. Life is going to deal you lots of curveballs and stress, right? How you deal with it effectively is the key. Because to assume that nothing is going to be thrown at us is crazy. So what's amazing about your program is things are going to be thrown at you. Life has a way of doing that, right? And so it's just so easy now to just work with it. Just breathe through it. Yeah, just breathe through it. That's really everything.
Yeah, it absolutely is. 4-second freedom breath is everything. And when you really, really start to utilize it, it does change. I was utilizing it this morning. There was some stress that I was going through this morning. I was just like, hey, go back to your own principles and your beliefs and what you teach. Because even to this day, I still utilize all those tools.
Yeah.
So Theo, if there's somebody right now that, well, obviously we know there's going to be people that are watching, what would you say to them? What would you say to them if they're in pain, they're in a health crisis, and they come across your video and you talking and you and I having this chat right now? What would you say to them about Pain Freedom Method?
Oh, so it's interesting because, so once again, when you become the watcher and you recognize certain conditions and attitudes, and there's so many people in our outer circle that I now see that live in these physical, emotional states of unhappiness, distress, pain. And it's crazy to me because the whole time I'm thinking, oh my God, I want them to just source out Yana. And I'll mention you, and it's interesting, you know, the saying, you could lead a horse to water, but if it doesn't want to drink, right, it won't. So when people are ready, they will come to you. But all I could say is, don't wait. If you're sitting in a pit, if you've tried everything, don't make the assumption, because I mean, I've been there, where, oh, just one more thing. I know if I do this, this will be the key. Oh, I know if I do this, this will be the key. Because you'll just keep doing and doing. And the worst part is, when you're in a state of physical distress, the worst part is you give a certain thing hope, that you're hoping that if I do this or if I do that, it's going to change. And it doesn't. So until you really deal with what's happening inside you, then everything else is just tertiary. It's not even real. It won't really do much. And if it does do anything, it'll be temporary, and then you'll immediately go back to where you were.
Back to the old patterns.
Yeah. Is that a good answer? I don't know.
Yeah, no. Well, it's just authentically what you feel, and what your basic experience was, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, it was really, honestly, Theo, it was a gift to my life to be able to work with you. I'm blessed that we do actually live closer to each other, so I can actually, see you and so on and so forth, because I wish I could see everybody in person, because at the end of the day, you really do choose your path. You choose to be happy. You choose to stay in a state. And because most people don't know how to shift their consciousness, they don't know how to bring themselves out of that state. They don't know how to give themselves permission to create a new pathway in their life, right?
Yeah.
So, and you've really taken it and run with it. And I'm really glad that you touched upon that, because you really have to be ready for the program. And if you're not, if you make it, because some people live in their illness, they live in their pain. That's all that they know, right? And until that they are ready to take that step forward, they're not going to do the work, because it is work. It is truly work. And that's why, previously, before, when you started the program, I said, everybody goes through the fitability assessment to make sure that they are ready.
Yeah.
So, Theo, I thank you from my heart and my soul for your time today. I thank you from my heart and soul that I was able to take this journey with you, because honestly, it's magical to be on this journey myself with every single person that I bring in and are able to work with. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Yana, for just you. It was awesome. It was like, it's interesting. I always refer to you as Yana, my life coach.
So love you, Theo.
It's like, if anyone out there is even, and don't get us wrong, you and I are on the same page. If you're going through some really huge health crisis, we're not saying ignore medical science, right? I mean, doctors.
No, absolutely not. This is in addition to, thank you for bringing that up. This is not to take over. You still do everything your doctor is telling you. You still, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, Theo.
Every single day I take my immunosuppressants from Big Pharma that keep me alive. But, it's interesting. Without you, having you is like supplement to that, right? It helps them work better. And that's what you really want.
Well, thank you so much, Theo.
I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so, so much. And I hope you have a brilliant and amazing day. It's beautiful outside.
It is. And we're at the beach, so we are going to have a great time. Thanks, Yana.
Thank you.